Hey, it's great to have you with us today at Citilife. I want to share today around the power of names and what names are like to us. And there's a story years ago, my whole entire family at the time were in a car accident, and in that accident there was all sorts of things going on. And there's going to be some photos you'll see as I speak. They'll clip up behind me and all that sort of thing. But as you look at the photos, you'll see a bit of carnage, and you'll see a photo of me there and all done up in my cast and whatnot. But I remember that day, that sitting in the car, and as I came to from my unconscious state, there was police and ambos and fireys and glass and bits of cars strewn all over the place, and there was bits of blood, I'm sure, from, I had it on me and all that sort of thing. My family was crying and the kids were out of the car, and so I don't know how long I was unconscious for, but when I came to, the ambos finally got me out of the car and into the back of the ambulance. And when I was lying in the ambulance, I don't know if you've ever been in one, but when they shut the door, it's like the rest of the world just stops, and you just hear the running of the vehicle and things like that. And while I was lying there, just obviously just in a big daze and probably in shock and all that sort of stuff, I never forget the moment that one of the ambulance officers turned around and he looked at me, and he looked right into my face and he said, "Darren, you're going to be okay." And just the overwhelming sense that when somebody spoke my name in a moment of absolute sheer mayhem and chaos, somebody called my name, and the calm that came over me was amazing. I'll never forget it. And just like Archie, in his situation of being incarcerated wrongly, and myself in the car accident, there's a story in the Bible in Mark chapter 16 about Peter, who was one of Christ's disciples. He began to be in this place where obviously guilt would have been on him, because Jesus told him just before he was crucified, he said, "Peter, you're going to deny me 3 times. And what did Peter say? If you don't know the story, he said this. He said, "No, Lord, that will never be." Well, here we are in Mark chapter 16, and Peter has denied Christ 3 times. And so I don't know if you know the sense of that, of when, just imagine, put yourself in that moment that Peter has now denied the one that he walked with every day, that he shared life with, he shared meals with, they slept in the same barn or the same paddock or wherever they all slept together at night. They were in that same place, and that's just, they would have had an incredible friendship over those 3 years of ministry with Christ. And here's Peter right now, probably even contemplating giving up on everything, giving up on life, giving up on his ministry, giving up on everything that he thought he would have been doing when Jesus was walking the earth with him, because he denied him. And the guilt and the weight and the shame and everything that had been happening in his world had just become crashing down. But here in Mark chapter 16, verse 7, we get this story. The women are walking through the gardens, and they're about to go and see Jesus' tomb. And while they're walking there, this angel appears before them. And he says this to them. He says, "But go tell the disciples and Peter, he is going ahead of you into Galilee." So here the angel has appeared before the women, and he said to them, so you put yourself in this picture right now. Peter is over somewhere hiding, most likely, or in a dark place, and just absolutely distraught of what has just happened. These women are walking in the garden. This angel appears before them and says this: "Go and tell the disciples and Peter, specifically Peter, to meet me in Galilee. I'm heading there now." What an incredible feeling it must have been when they came before him and said, "Peter, we've got a message. We've got a message here for you." He wants us, the disciples, to go, and he also asked for you by name. Can you imagine that moment? Can you imagine that moment when the person that you loved and lived with for 3 years just constantly gave everything you could, and then you walked away from him? He calls your name and he says, "I want to meet with you." What an absolute incredible moment it must have been. You see, Peter was identified by name. Just like Archie, back on the stage, he was identified by name. All those years where he would have felt most likely like just a number, a nameless number in a prison system that had forgotten him. And just like me, when all the chaos and everything was ringing around me and I wasn't sure what was going on and everything like that, and then somebody called my name, and the moment that happens, there's something about it. And then Peter, the one who denied our Christ and denied his Savior at a most crucial moment in time, finally, a few days later, he hears his name, requested to meet that one. I imagine that it would have been absolutely phenomenal, that weight, that pressure, and maybe a bit of tentativeness as he was going to Galilee, most likely, because what's he going to say? He wants to meet me, what's he going to say? But from there on, we know that Peter was one of the great ministers of the gospel throughout the world, and what an incredible story and a journey that he took. I know this matters to us as people today even. We love it when people know our names. You know, take for example when we are in a waiting room and somebody calls our name. I have the name Nosworthy. Now to me, that is the simplest name in the world, but people always say noteworthy or not worthy or Nosworthy. It's not any of that. It's simply Nosworthy. Nosworthy. That is not a difficult name. And so I know that names are important to us, and the way that people use our names are important because we want to correct them when they do it wrong. We get upset. I'll often go home and go, I went to the doctors again today. They say Mr. Nosworthy or Mr. Noteworthy. I've been going there for over 20 years and they still don't get it right. You know, these are the things that happen. When we misspell our names, it's important to us that people get it right. The other thing is this that we love too, is that when we just have a brief encounter with somebody and we meet them just for that moment, and we meet and we exchange names and all that sort of thing, and we go our way, and then months or even years later we run into them again and they remember our name. Hey Darren, how you going? You know, we feel a little bit, well, you know, we start doing the old, well, they remembered my name. And especially if they're famous or somebody that we think is important and they remember us. I've got a person who I look up to in my life, and I have met them a handful of times over my life as a youth pastor and an assistant pastor and a senior pastor and all those jobs that I've done. And I've only met them a handful of times, and they're a big speaker and all that sort of thing. And I've been in meetings where they've mentioned my name. They say, oh, it's great to see Darren here again today. And I just get this little bit of ego starts to happen because it's important that people know us by name. It's important. We look for it. We look for that moment, just like, again, with Archie being called out. Archie, can you imagine the feeling of that just happening? More than just that he's won the competition, but somebody's calling my name. They know who I am after 37 years of being locked up. Peter, having denied Christ, Jesus calls on him and he says, meet with me, Peter. Come with the others, but I want you specifically. You see, we get excited when people call our name. We get excited when people use it because it transforms us. It makes us feel like family. It makes us feel connected. It brings us life. It's like this. It's like when I say to Janine, I love you, she loves it. You know, she goes, I love you too. But when I say, I love you, Janine, there's a megaton of difference between that. Why is that different? Because there's that personal connection. I can say, I love you to the dog. Oh, I love you, doggy, wuggy, all that. I can do all these things. I can say, oh, I love ice cream and I love that. But when I say to her specifically, I say, I love you, Janine. I've used her name. It's that soulness. It's that oneness that connects us. And I do love you, Janine, as you're watching this video. But I want you to understand today how Peter must have felt when the message came through. He was specifically asked for. Imagine that. At that moment, I reckon he would have understood he was forgiven and he was accepted by God. Just in that very moment. What an incredible moment that must have been. You see, which means this for you and I. That in God's eyes, you are not nameless and you're not faceless. You are important to Him. I don't know any of your situations out there. I don't know the absolute shocking time that people are having everywhere around the globe, or even you there right now in your room, wherever you're sitting. But you need to know this, is that today God has you on his mind. He's thinking about you. He's not only thinking about you, but he's thinking about me, and he's thinking about the guys in this room right now. He's thinking of them by name. He's got them on his mind. His thoughts are towards you. There's a great song written back in the 80s by a Christian artist called David Meese, and it was called Somebody's Calling Your Name. It's an absolute classic song, and it's one of my favorites when, you know, sometimes I'm going through stuff and I play it, and it's just an absolute great song. Very simple. It just goes, somebody's calling your name. Can you hear him today? Folks out there, you need to understand this, that God is calling your name. There's a scripture that says this in Isaiah 49:1. It says, before I was born, the Lord called me from my mother's womb, and he's spoken my name. You see, before you were even born, God knew your name. For someone today, that's really important to know, that God knows your name. God knows your name. It's not just somebody, it's one of those people. It's like if you were sitting in a Hugh Jackman concert or sitting in some sort of, you know, big arena where there was a big thing going on in front of you, and that lead person sat up and went, John, man, it's great to have you in the concert today. You would feel $1 million. Well, it's better than that. That's nothing. That doesn't amount to anything. That God, the Creator, the one who made everything that we see, the one that created this world, knows your name. Before you were even formed, before you were even in your mother's womb, God knew all about you. Wow. Wow. Every time I think about it, I cannot get over the weight that it brings, the peace that it brings, that God knows me. And not just because I'm a pastor, not just because I'm a Christian. He knew me before that. He knew all about me, and he cared about me. As I grew up and as I became a man, and all the things that I've done in my life, he knew the good decisions, the bad decisions. And he still knows me by name, and he calls me and says, I love you. Today, as you sit at home, or you're in your car, or maybe sitting at the beach, putting your headphones on, watching this, you need to know today that God knows your name. As you're sitting there today, just take a moment to reflect on that whole process thought of that God knows me. What does it mean for me that God knows me? That means you're identified. It means that you have somebody that you can turn to. It means that you've got a safe haven when somebody knows your name. It's that moment in time where when Peter heard his name, the weight falls off. It's that moment in time when somebody calls out, and chants it in heaven. You know, the Bible says that we've got a great cloud of witnesses cheering us on. There's people cheering you on today, saying you can do it and you can make it. You see, the sacrifice that Christ gave was not just so that you could go to church. The sacrifice Christ gave was because God knew your name, and he said, I give this life now for that one. I give it now for David. I give it now for Elaine. I give it now for Terry. I give it now for Mark. I give it now for whoever your name is. That's what it was for. When Jesus went to the cross and rose again, your name was on his mind. I pray that this week that you would take the moment to think about this whole thing of God knows your name. Isaiah 49:1, he knew it before you were born. He knew your name. He spoke your name. What an incredible thought. I pray that this week you will find immense peace in that moment. I pray that you will find him calling your name. It's funny, sometimes at home I'll sit in the quiet where I live and just listen for that. When I hear that soft little voice. So today, Know this, God knows your name. What an incredible thing. I pray that you will experience the love and the peace and the joy that comes with that. God bless you. Let's pray. Father, we thank you that this week you are with us. Lord, that not only that, but you know our names. Lord, you know each individual today, no matter where they're from, no matter what country they're from, no matter how they've been brought up or wherever you know their name. And so, God, I pray that we would take peace in that, and God, that we would find comfort in that, and that this week, that we would have that solid ground to stand upon where God knows me. And I thank you for it. Lord, right now, if somebody's just sitting in their room and they're unsure of all this, and God, I pray that your peace would come and that they would call on your name. Because your word says, those who call on your name shall be saved. So Lord, I pray that anyone that calls on you right now, Lord, they would know that you love them and have saved them today. And we thank you in Jesus' wonderful name. Amen. Well, have a great week. Trust you enjoyed being with us. Don't forget to like and share, and we'll see you next week.
Wow, church, what a great sermon by Pastor Darren. God has called you by name. And look, as was said in Isaiah, He knew you when you were in your mother's womb. He's called you by name. So I encourage you, grab hold of what Pastor Darren has shared with you this morning and just let it speak to you this week. Also, church, don't forget to like us and share us online on our YouTube channel, on Facebook, on Instagram. And look, church, have a great week. And remember, you are the church.